call news on cable. They'd rather, listen in and hear some different points of view.
That, and I tried advertising for a while. With advertisers and stuff. I'm retired, so, I don't really care at this point, if I have advertising or not. But all of a sudden, the couple I had started dictating me, well, you can't have this guest on, or we won't advertise, or you can't do this, you can't say this. And I got to a point where, I was going to renew for another month, for advertising. And I said, you know what, I don't want to have you on anymore because you're sitting there telling me I can't talk about this subject, or that you feel I shouldn't talk about this subject. I said, that's not the way it's going to be. And then I decided, you know what? I live off of, like I said, Social Security. My wife works, so I run what I do out of my own pocket. It doesn't cost me much because I do get some donations. But you know what? I don't really like anybody dictating to me. Now, I will be honest with you. There is a station that's going to come in the next week or two. They're picking us up. There's a couple more radio stations but I put the ground rules is that if they dictate to me, I'll cut them off. I don't get any money from them, carrying my show. They make their money with their advertisers. And I said, okay, you can carry my show. This is the amount of time you have for my 2-hour show for advertising. Because I don't want to be like those other radio shows where if you tune in for a 3-hour show or a 4-hour show, you're only listening to 3 hours on a 4-hour show. I don't want that.
Like Coast to Coast?
I don't mention names, but I mean...
Oh, I'm sorry. That's overkill with the commercials. I'm sorry. I don't want to...
No,
I shouldn't mention.
And I again, because old time radio, my archives are free. I'm not going to sit there and charge people to listen to any of the old shows. I mean, I do weed it out. I don't want it more than about 280 hours of content at any time, but they can go listen to anything they want for free. I'm not going to sit there and say you have to pay $4 or $5 a month to listen to my shows. I mean, that's ridiculous. And maybe it's because I'm an old school broadcaster, but that's the way I like running my show. I want to get the message out. When I have you on, I want your point of view heard, and if you're promoting your book, I want people to know about your book. And I'm here. It's a two-way street. Okay. Now there is guests that'll come on my show that won't let me say one word. Well, they'll never be back on my show again. But people like you and all the other guests I have, we have a conversation like you're sitting here in my room on the sofa and I'm sitting on the chair and we're just talking. And that's what I find interesting. Well,
good. You're a great host.
Well, thank you.
You're a wonderful host. Wins your free book. I enjoy your show. I like the other show on your internet channel too. I enjoy talk radio, and you guys do a great job.
Yeah, and in the night I go to bed and I can't sleep at night. I turn my show on and I'm asleep in 5 minutes. So it also has that good point to it too. But anyway, I'm going to let you go. I will contact you. We'll get you back on here again in the next month.
Awesome.
Well,
thank you so much for having me.
Well, no, thank you for being a guest, and you have a great week.
You too.
Okay. Good night, kid.
You too.
Bye. But anyway, I had a cough there. I'm sorry. A couple of things we got going. This is our anniversary month, the month of September. That's we've been broadcasting now for a year. I can't believe it. I mean, average 5 nights a week, and the show keeps growing. Now, a couple of things we're going to do a little bit different. We want to have a little bit of fun during this month, probably all the way up to Halloween. So on Friday nights, we're going to do this little thing. It's called Scary Friday. You can call in the last half an hour at 9:30 Pacific West Coast time. Call us at 1-253-203-6695, and you can tell us the scariest story. And, a horror, it can be from a movie. It can be, real life where you've seen a Bigfoot or a black-eyed child, whatever you want to talk about. We'll give you about 5 to 10 minutes to talk about a scary story. And, maybe you can scare the audience out there. Now, at the end of the show, the last half an hour, we'll take and find the best scary story of that half an hour of you calling in, and you'll win a gift. Now, we'll do that each week. At the end of September, I got this great gift. It is a recorder. It's designed for, you can go, if you are out ghost hunting or you wanted, whatever you want to use it for. It's a high quality. It's not a $20 one. It's a several $100 recorder. It's brand new in the box. And the best story for the month of September, they'll win it. So, we're trying to give back to the listeners of Night Dreams Talk Radio as best as we can. A couple of things we're going to have a little bit different, too. I got a person coming in around the middle of the month. He's going to talk about horror movies and horror masks. What, collectors out there are collecting horror masks. There's a big a group of people that are into, collecting horror movie items. And he'll be on our show for 2 hours talking about it. And then at the end of the show, again, it's on a Friday, I believe it's the 21st, we'll have, again, where you can call in and tell a scary story. So we're going to also be doing that again in October. Again, I think we're going to devote a whole 2 hours to scary stories in October, just before Halloween. That's what we're doing on Night Dreams Talk Radio. And that's what I plan to do. Like I was telling people, when we first started this out, I was kind of leery. I didn't know if I wanted to get into broadcasting again. I mean, I was retired. I didn't even touch a microphone for 10 years. A little bit about me, for the people that don't know me, is when I was 10 years old, my dad came home with an old CB radio and said, "Here, son, you like talking? Here's a CB radio." And I got on it and I started talking to people. But it got boring, I maybe could talk 30 miles, 60 miles away, and if the atmosphere is right, I could actually talk around the world, which was illegal back then. Still is illegal with a CB. But it just didn't fill me where I just didn't have the enjoyment. I wanted to talk to people everywhere. So next thing I did is I studied, the CW and studied electronics enough to get my amateur radio license. Had my amateur radio license for a few years, and for some dumb reason I let it lapse. And then after I got out of the military, I didn't know what I wanted to do. And I used to listen to a radio station called KJR in Seattle. And it was a John Maynard and Charlie Brown. I really enjoyed their Top 40 show. I used to walk, even when I was a teenager, like 13, 14 years old, I used to walk like 10 miles to the radio stations down on Harbor Island, Washington, and go, talk to the DJs. I mean, that's how obsessed I've always been with radio. Well, they invited me to come to a new school they started. It was called Radio Show Broadcasting, and I went there. And I was hooked. I sat behind this control room. I learned how to become a DJ. Oh, wow. I was in seven heaven. I got out of the class probably faster than anybody because I love talking. And one of the first jobs I got was in a radio station. They hired me to do Top 40. Well, the day I get there, I moved there into Battleground, Washington, or near Battleground, Washington. And the owner said, "Hey, we got a problem. We just changed our format. We're not going to do Top 40 anymore, and I don't know if we have a job for you." And I said, "Well, what format are you guys at? Are going to be doing?" "Oh, we're going talk radio." And the guy goes, "Would you want to try?" And I go, "Well, I don't know what to talk about." "Well, we already got a guy who's going to be talking about current events. We need something different." And, I just was happened to be reading a newspaper in that area. I guess there was an occult in that area where, practicing witchcraft and all that stuff. And there was sacrifices of animals going on and some people missing. And I go, wow, you know what? Paranormal. Of course, paranormal then is a little bit different than now, because now we can talk about everything. back then it was really a tricky subject to talk about, paranormal. I mean, we're talking, before Art Bell even was talking paranormal. I did a paranormal show, and I got hooked on talking paranormal like you wouldn't believe. I think Art Bell didn't even come out to doing paranormal to the early 90s or late 80s when John Lear said, hey, to Art Bell, he goes, you need to go into the paranormal. That's where it's at. Don't talk about, current events. Because, seriously, current events is cool, but I couldn't handle talking about the current events every day. That'd be crazy. So I can see why Art shifted off to it and went into the paranormal. I went into thinking I was going to be doing, top 40 stuff, and all of a sudden I started doing paranormal. And, I love the paranormal like you wouldn't believe, because it's so many different things we can talk about. UFOs, Bigfoot, black-eyed children, witchcraft, horror movies. It's just so many different things it falls in the paranormal. And I love it. And, and sometimes I have a guest on my show that, I don't agree with what they say, or I feel that maybe they're a little far out, but you know what? It makes it like Art Bell used to tell me on the phone. He goes, it's entertainment. So I let people talk about, what they want to talk about. And I leave it up to you, the listener, to make that decision if you believe it or not. But, we learn a lot. And I think paranormal has come so far in the last 10 years. Thank God Art Bell came around in the early 90s and made paranormal a household name. Even I just want to say thank you to all the truckers that listen to my show. They download my show during the day or night, and then when they're out on their long hauls, they listen to my show. And they said it keeps them from getting bored. And, hey, I appreciate that, I listen to my show at night when I go to bed, and it puts me asleep in 5 minutes. What can I say? But, there's so many things that hasn't even been discussed yet in the paranormal. And I hope and pray that I get those guests in that can bring up new subjects in the paranormal. I will make enemies right now. And I hate to say this. And I had this talk with Art Bell before he passed on. There's a lot of people, for a while I was a general manager of a chain of camera stores, professional camera stores, not those type you see in the malls. And it's funny, people would come in and they would buy a camera. They knew nothing about photography at all. And this is when digital was first starting to come out. And then you see them 3 weeks later, and all of a sudden they're saying they're doing a professional wedding, and they're charging this amount of money, and they're doing this. They became an expert in photography in 3 weeks because they put the camera on the portrait mode, or they put it on the program mode, and they could go out and get a beautiful picture. Now, where I'm going to make enemies right now is a lot of people go out and buy a $20 microphone, plug it into their USB port, and all of a sudden they're now a talk show host. That is scary, because some of them, before I decided to do this show in the first place, I listened to literally hundreds of different paranormal talk shows out there. And what's bad is if you get people on there, they don't know what they're talking about, and they're literally damaging. And they are damaging the paranormal because they're talking about stuff they know nothing about. And then they get a group of them, like a man and a woman or two women chatting, doing a talk show host bit thing, either on Facebook Live or on the internet, and they don't know what they're talking about, and they're laughing, and they're chewing gum and drinking soda, and they're just having a gale, happy time. They don't realize by doing that, the serious people who believe in the paranormal look at that and they get turned off. I think it's so important that, that you give 100% respect to the paranormal and 100% respect to your guest to make it work. Every time I have a guest that comes on and they want to talk about their book, and if they are kind enough to send me a copy of their book.